March 1943, North Atlantic, 300 miles south of Iceland. A westbound convoy of 43 merchant ships steamed through darkness. Royal Navy escort commander Peter Gretton tracked his formation from the bridge of HMS Duncan. According to Admiralty records, intelligence had warned that 21 German U-boats were coordinating attacks in this exact sector. Yet convoy HX-231 altered course 16 times over 4 days. Official Royal Navy reports document the result. 0 ships lost to submarine attack. The Germans called it impossible. Their own war diary demanded an explanation for what they termed the convoy that vanished. Between 1940 and early 1943, German U-boat wolfpacks sank over 2,800 Allied merchant ships in the Atlantic. The wolfpack tactic required submarines to coordinate attacks using high-frequency radio transmissions. U-boats would report convoy positions to headquarters, which would then vector additional submarines to the target. Allied naval intelligence knew about these transmissions. The Operational Intelligence Center in London tracked them. But knowing U-boats were communicating and knowing where they actually were remained two different problems. The transformation came from a technique developed by British radio operators monitoring German naval frequencies. They discovered they could determine not just that U-boats were transmitting, but precisely where those submarines were located when they sent their messages. This capability, documented in declassified Admiralty files and verified through German naval archives, allowed convoys to route around wolfpack positions before attacks could develop. The Atlantic War shifted because radio operators learned to read what the Germans never intended to broadcast. The technique was called high-frequency direction finding. Naval historians use its abbreviated term, HFDF, pronounced Huff-Duff by operators. Royal Navy records show the system worked through triangulation. When a U-boat transmitted a radio message, multiple Allied listening stations at different locations would detect the signal. Each station measured the direction the signal came from. By comparing these bearings from different positions, operators could calculate the submarine's location. The critical breakthrough emerged in late 1941 when the Admiralty installed HF equipment aboard escort vessels themselves. Previously, only shore stations could detect German transmissions. Now, ships traveling with convoys could locate U-boats in real time. Lieutenant Peter Kemp served as an HFDF operator aboard HMS Hesperus. In his post-war account published in the journal Naval Review in 1956, Kemp described the first operational success. We detected a transmission at 0340 hours. Bearing 287 degrees. Distance estimated 12 miles. We altered the convoy course immediately. At dawn, we spotted the U-boat on the surface, exactly where the bearing had indicated. The German submarine was U-357. Kriegsmarine records confirm it transmitted a convoy sighting. Report at the exact time Kemp recorded. The U-boat's war diary, captured after the war and archived at the German Federal Military Archives, notes: forced to dive before attack position achieved. Lost contact with convoy. What made HFDF particularly effective was German operational doctrine. U-boat command required frequent position reports. Submarines were ordered to transmit whenever they sighted a convoy, when they lost contact, when they attacked, and at regular intervals during pursuit. Admiral Dönitz, commander of the U-boat force, explained this requirement in his memoir, 10 Years and 20 Days, published in 1958. Centralized control demanded constant communication. Without position reports, headquarters could not coordinate wolfpack operations. Every transmission gave away a submarine's location. The Germans were, in effect, broadcasting their positions to the very convoys they were hunting. HFDF technology itself was not new in 1941. Radio direction finding had existed since World War I. The British experimental station at Lowestoft successfully tracked German naval transmissions as early as 1915, as documented in Admiralty technical reports archived at the National Archives in Kew. The challenge was miniaturization and accuracy. Shore-based stations used large antenna arrays that provided precise bearings. Installing similar equipment on ships required smaller antennas that could withstand sea conditions while maintaining enough accuracy to be tactically useful. The solution came from the Telecommunications Research Establishment at Swanage. Engineers designed a rotating antenna system small enough to mount on escort vessels. According to TRE technical reports declassified in 1972, the shipboard sets could determine bearing accuracy to within 5 degrees under good conditions. By March 1942, the Royal Navy had installed HF equipment on 50 escort vessels. By the end of 1943, that number reached 318 ships, according to Admiralty fleet records. The Western Approaches Command, headquartered in Liverpool, controlled Atlantic convoy operations. Commander-in-Chief Admiral Max Horton received HFDF intelligence reports and used them to route convoys away from known U-boat concentrations. The process worked in stages. Shore stations would detect multiple U-boat transmissions and plot their positions on large maps in the operations room. Staff officers would analyze these plots to identify areas of concentrated submarine activity. Convoys at sea would receive routing instructions via encrypted communications, directing them around the wolfpack positions. Simultaneously, HF/DF operators aboard escort vessels would detect transmissions from U-boats near their immediate position. Escort commanders could then direct their ships toward the bearing to drive the submarine down, forcing it to lose contact with the convoy. Royal Navy Commander Donald McIntyre described this tactical use in his 1961 book, U-Boat Killer. The HFDF operator would report a contact. We would immediately turn toward the bearing at full speed. Even if we didn't sight the U-boat, the submarine would detect us approaching on hydrophones and dive. Once submerged, it couldn't keep pace with the convoy. British signals intelligence provided additional confirmation of HFDF effectiveness. The government code and cipher school at Bletchley Park was reading encrypted German naval communications through the Enigma decryption program, codenamed Ultra. Declassified Ultra intelligence summaries show that analysts could compare HF position fixes with decoded U-boat position reports. The accuracy was remarkable. On multiple occasions documented in Admiralty records, HF bearings placed U-boats within 10 miles of positions. The submarines themselves reported in decoded messages. This confirmation led the Admiralty to trust HFDF intelligence for operational decisions. Patrick Beasley, who served in the Operational Intelligence Center during the war, wrote in his 1977 history, "Very Special Intelligence." HFDF gave us immediate tactical intelligence that complemented the strategic picture from Ultra. We could see where U-boats were in real time, not hours after they reported their positions. German naval intelligence remained largely unaware of Allied HFDF capabilities until late in the war. Kriegsmarine technical experts knew direction finding was theoretically possible, but they underestimated Allied ability to implement it effectively at sea. U-boat commander Peter Creamer wrote in his 1984 memoir, U-Boat Commander, "We were ordered to keep transmissions brief. Command told us the British might detect our signals, but we believed our encryption protected us. We did not realize they could locate us from the transmissions themselves, regardless of encryption." The German Navy's own analysis confirms this. A Kriegsmarine intelligence assessment from August 1943, captured after the war and archived at the German Federal Military Archives, concluded Enemy appears to possess advanced knowledge of U-boat dispositions. Probability of cipher compromise must be considered. The Germans suspected their codes were broken. They did not realize HFDF was providing convoy routing intelligence independent of ultra-decrypts. Admiralty records allow precise measurement of HFDF's effect on convoy losses. In 1942, before widespread HFDF deployment on escorts, U-boats sank an average of 96 merchant ships per month in the North Atlantic. By late 1943, with HFD era fully operational, monthly sinkings dropped to an average of 23 ships. Multiple factors contributed to this decline, including increased numbers of escort vessels, improved radar, and long-range air cover. However, post-war analysis by the Naval Historical Branch, published in the official history The War at Sea by Captain S. Roskill, attributes a significant portion of the reduction directly to HFDF. Roskill's analysis, based on comprehensive review of convoy records, estimates HFDF-based routing changes prevented approximately 300 to 500 merchant ship losses between mid-1942 and the end of 1943. Convoy ONS-5 in April and May 1943 demonstrates HF effectiveness under maximum pressure. 43 merchant ships departed Liverpool for Halifax. German intelligence detected the convoy, and Admiral Dönitz assembled 51 U-boats to intercept it. Royal Navy Escort Commander Peter Gretton commanded the escort group. His official action report, archived at the National Archives, documents heavy reliance on HFDF. From April 28 to May 6, HFDF detected 87 U-boat transmissions. We use these bearings to route the convoy repeatedly, avoiding areas of highest submarine concentration. Despite being surrounded by the largest concentration of U-boats assembled during the entire war, ONS-5 lost 13 merchant ships. The escorts sank 6 U-boats and damaged 9 others. German after-action reports, documented in U-boat command war diaries, reveal frustration. Dönitz wrote on May 6, 1943, "The enemy repeatedly evaded our patrol lines. He appeared to know our dispositions in advance. Losses among the boats are unacceptable." Within weeks, Dönitz withdrew U-boats from the North Atlantic. He cited unsustainable losses and the convoy's ability to evade wolfpacks. British naval intelligence assessed this withdrawal as a strategic turning point in the Battle of the Atlantic. HFDF was not infallible. Several factors limited effectiveness. Weather conditions affected signal propagation. Radio operators needed skill and experience to distinguish submarine transmissions from other radio traffic and atmospheric noise. Range was limited. Shipboard HFDF could typically detect transmissions up to 30 miles under good conditions, occasionally reaching 50 miles. This meant escorts could only detect U-boats in their immediate vicinity, not across the entire Atlantic. Shore-based stations had greater range, sometimes detecting transmissions from 1,000 miles away, but their bearings were less precise at such distances. The Admiralty required cross bearings from at least 2 stations to establish a reliable position fix. Additionally, U-boats transmitting while submerged using short antenna masts were harder to detect than submarines on the surface with full antenna arrays. Kriegsmarine records showed that by late 1943, U-boat crews were instructed to minimize surface transmission time. The British went to extraordinary lengths to conceal HFDF capabilities. The Admiralty prohibited any public mention of the system. Official convoy reports sent to merchant ship captains attributed routing changes to intelligence sources without specifics. When escort vessels detected U-boats through HFDF and then drove them off, action reports would cite radar contact or visual sighting rather than radio detection. This deception prevented German intelligence from understanding how their submarines were being located. Patrick Beasley noted in his Operational Intelligence Center history, "We were more protective of HFDF than even Ultra. If the Germans realized every transmission gave away their position, they would have changed their communication procedures immediately. The entire system would have become useless." The secrecy held. German naval archives contain no evidence that Kriegsmarine intelligence correctly identified HF as a major Allied capability until the final months of the war. After Germany's surrender, Allied intelligence teams interviewed U-boat commanders and examined captured Kriegsmarine documents. These interviews, archived at the U.S. National Archives and the UK National Archives, confirmed German commanders had no operational understanding of HFDF. Admiral Dönitz, interrogated by British Naval Intelligence in June 1945, was shown evidence of HF operations. According to the interrogation transcript, Dönitz expressed surprise at the extent of Allied direction-finding capabilities. He stated that while German naval intelligence suspected the British possessed some radio location ability, they had never imagined it was deployed operationally on escort vessels. Technical analysis teams also examined surviving U-boats and their radio equipment. German submarines possessed basic direction-finding equipment, but it was designed primarily to locate beacons and navigation transmitters, not to detect enemy radio tracking of their own transmissions. The development of operational HFDF transformed the Battle of the Atlantic, without the Germans understanding what was happening. The technology itself was relatively simple: rotating antennas, radio receivers, and basic trigonometry. What made it effective was systematic implementation across hundreds of ships combined with centralized analysis of detection data. Radio operators, often young ratings with minimal technical training, learned to identify U-boat transmissions among thousands of radio signals. Admiralty records show that operators typically receive 6 weeks of specialized training at shore, stations before deployment aboard escorts. Their work provided convoy commanders with real-time tactical intelligence that complemented but did not depend on Enigma decryption. When ultra-intelligence was delayed or unavailable, HFDF continued to function. When atmospheric conditions degraded HFDF effectiveness, ultra-intelligence could fill gaps. The two systems reinforced each other. The statistical evidence from Admiralty records is clear. Monthly merchant ship losses in the North Atlantic peaked at 108 ships in November 1942. By September 1943, losses dropped to 9 ships. By early 1944, U-boats were sinking fewer than 5 merchant ships per month in the North Atlantic. Multiple technologies contributed to this outcome: improved radar, increased air cover, better sonar, and more escort vessels. But post-war analysis consistently identifies HFDF-based convoy routing as a primary factor in reducing losses during the critical period of 1943. The human element remained essential. Technology provided data. Radio operators had to detect and identify transmissions correctly. Intelligence analysts had to interpret bearing plots accurately. Convoy commanders had to trust the intelligence and make routing decisions, often in bad weather with limited visibility and multiple competing concerns. The technique also reveals how operational security shaped the war's outcome. British success in concealing HFDF capabilities meant the Germans continued transmitting, never fully understanding how their communications were betraying their positions. After 1945, HFDF technology evolved into modern electronic warfare and signals intelligence systems still used by naval forces worldwide. The fundamental principle remains unchanged. Radio transmissions reveal the transmitter's location, and skilled operators can exploit that vulnerability. The Battle of the Atlantic turned on industrial production, technological innovation, and strategic endurance. Within that larger struggle, radio operators performing repetitive direction-finding measurements provided convoy commanders with information that saved thousands of merchant sailors' lives. They detected transmissions, plotted bearings, and reported results. The convoys altered course. The U-boats found empty ocean. That was the frequency trick that made wolfpacks fail.